Most people settle because they don't know how to maximize the potential that God has given them. Welcome to the Thrive College podcast, where we help young leaders navigate the challenges and opportunities of their future and faith. Each episode, we'll be giving the mic to young leaders to ask tough questions to some of the world's most influential voices. We're excited you're here with us today. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Thrive College podcast. I'm Dina Davidson, and today we're going to start out by asking questions about breakfast, because that's always good to know about people, and I'm really into breakfast via Thrive Conference early mornings. So Cody, what did you have for breakfast?
I had a breakfast burrito with a beef version of like chorizo. I don't know what it's called though.
That defies the definition of chorizo.
I know.
I'm intrigued, but thank you for sharing. Yeah. And that sounds like a great breakfast. How about you, Benjamin?
Well, I was flying from Denver this morning. 4:30 a.m. start to get to the airport.
Awful.
So it was like we're talking airplane food.
Ew.
Whatever label you want to give that.
Oh,
so
nastiness.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing good.
But all of that sacrifice was to be here with you.
And we're so grateful that you are. A little bit about your background. You've been a pastor in Australia for a while, and then you are an incredible author. And one of the things that you specialize in is you actually come alongside and coach churches and help them know how to reach Gen Z. So a lot of people listening fall into that Gen Z category, and probably a mystery for them why churches would need help understanding how to reach them. So give us just one thing that you like to help churches know about reaching Gen Z.
For me, millennials and Gen Z, and I draw a line at the digital revolution in terms of separating generations. So millennials are my generation. 64% of my generation that was raised in the church have left. So at some point, the emergency button needs to get pressed on the dashboard, because the numbers are staggering. It's such a big need. Our world is changing rapidly. Our churches are aging, and we need to go about generational renewal, not in our programs, not in our social media, not in our stages, but within the philosophical underpinnings of what we believe and how we behave as church communities, the ethos, culture of our church, our value systems. So I like to try and, pick away at the iceberg underneath the water level to say we can't just, make the veneer a little bit cooler and think young people are going to come flooding back in. We need to look deeper.
Yeah, I think that is so true. Sometimes we try to fix our lack of ability to reach younger generations by tweaking with the aesthetics. But what you're saying is there needs to be an overhaul of how we think about church and the right way to reach people, because even what we used to be able to assume about a basic knowledge of who God is and what values are, because of so many millennials leaving the church, and then now they're parenting a generation, they're going to parent differently, and there's going to be an absence of understanding of who God is, and even just the basics of what the Bible stories are. We have to pastor in a totally different way to reach a very different generation.
Yeah, very true.
So you are most recently the author of an incredible book called Eucatastrophe. Those are two words that don't seem to belong together.
Sure, yeah.
And I imagine there's a lot of people listening right now that they're in the midst of what seems to be like a real valley in their life, a catastrophe. They're hoping to escape it. They're hoping to get to the other side of it. They can't even fathom calling it good. So tell us about those two words. Why are they together on the front page of your book?
I went searching for a singular word that represented that in life, so much of the good and the growth comes out of adversity and hardship. I couldn't find a word in English. I looked at Spanish. My heritage is Greek. I looked there. It was in the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien that I found this word that he coined, eucatastrophe, EU catastrophe, which is translated good catastrophe. In his writings, he had this idea with his central characters that when the narrative seemed like there was no hope, it was the point of no return. There's no redeeming escape, that there would be a sudden turn towards joy. And so you see that in Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and different writings and now movies and so forth. And I came to see that as a great representation of how God behaves towards our imperfections in life. That good catastrophes are dual events. They're dual events in the sense that the same events that bring us to our knees, cover our face in tears, the moments or situations where we feel like there's no getting out of this, when you often look back at those same moments, seasons and events through the lens of some more life experience, we typically say they're the same events that made us who we are. We wouldn't be who we are today without going through those crucibles, and we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So a good catastrophe is revealing to us that your greatest good comes out of your deepest pain.
That is something I need to hear and something I don't want to
Sure.
hear. The greatest good comes out of your deepest pain. I know we've had different conversations. For both of us, there have been aspects of this life season that is just not been fun.
No.
It's been hard. So I think, what tips would you give even just Cody and myself? How do you go about finding the great good? Because sometimes, to be honest, it feels like the pain is so overwhelming, it's so sinking that you don't really know how to even begin searching for that good.
Well, one of the concept vehicles that I give in this book, Good Catastrophe, is the bicycle. And to me, it's become a good visual way of describing what I'm talking about, which is, imagine a bicycle with two wheels. One wheel represents the bad and the challenges and the hardships, and the other wheel represents the good, peace and joy. I think in my own life had come to kind of approach my fulfillment or happiness as if I could eliminate all of the problems somehow, erase all of the imperfections, then I could be happy.
Yeah.
I've learned in life that in the same way that a bicycle always has both wheels in motion, we tend to always have some good. Like there's never a day that's so bad that there's not some good.
Yeah.
But chances are, even on your very best day, you have some challenges and imperfections and things that stress you out.
Yeah.
So I've come to see not just the coexistence of joy and challenges, but something deeper than that.
Yeah.
A symbiotic relationship between the two, where God uses hardship as one of his primary tools to fashion us and make us who we're supposed to be. So if we spend our life thinking that something is wrong when mud gets thrown on the postcard of our life, avoiding pain, suppressing pain, running from it, we simultaneously end up trying to run away from really how God builds people, which is adversity and challenges.
So would you even say, like, because I have found a lot of my peers, even myself, even millennials, Gen Z, we've ran so hard away from adversity, like to the point to where we've created extreme levels of comfort. Like you've seen some of the largest businesses get birthed out of 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, who then scale this to this massive place of comfort. Is there should there be a way that even myself, millennials, that shift almost towards the pain? I guess not so much deliberately running to cause pain in my life, but it seems as though, as you're saying, the good and the bad, should I just willingly accept all the bad things as an outcome that it will be good eventually, if that makes any sense?
One way of answering that is we cannot see the challenges in our life as there's something wrong.
Okay.
Right? Where is God? And why isn't God removing this? So I think the theology of hope becomes very important. And we still have this trickle down of kind of a 90s era of a hope narrative that was something like this. If you love God enough, follow Jesus, serve him, then you'll be so blessed and favored and protected by him, as if to say, follow God more and you won't have all of these other challenges or pain in life. Well, for me, in the last 12 months, my older brother of 18 months died of cancer, and it was a terrible, the whole journey was terrible. I lost 2 grandparents. I went through the biggest transition of my life. If my hope was based on getting the ending that I wanted, then we don't have a true framework of hope that can stand up to the rigors of modern life, because life is complex, culture is complex. In many ways, life is not getting easier now for young people. So we need a gritty hope. We need a robust, resilient hope. And for me, I found that in studying the life of Job.
I'm reading Job right now. That's
Are you?
crazy. I'm reading through just a book of the Bible every week. And I'm literally in Job right now.
Now you have the perfect commentary to Job. It's called Good Catastrophe.
Seriously. So for those of us not familiar with Job, give us the gritty hope that you see in Job. Why does he need that gritty hope?
One of the ways we tell the story of Job, the treatment we give the story, I've come to resist, which goes something like this. Job was a good man who loved God, and one day a perfect storm arrived, and he lost everything, lost his 10 kids, lost his health, lost his business, kept hope in God, got everything back at the end of the story, but 2 times over. So when we preach this, we say things like double for your trouble, right? I have come to resist that as an accurate retelling or treatment of the story of Job. I have 3 sons. You can't come to me and say, Ben, we have a deal to make with you. We think it's great. We're going to take your 3 sons and replace them with 6 others. Right. I'd be like, my children are irreplaceable because they're my kids. I'm their father. They're my sons. You can't replace them with 6 or 600. Job never got back what he truly lost this side of eternity. Job's hope is the thing that allowed him to rebuild even when he didn't get what he wanted. And that's the remarkable part of his story, is not that he got everything he hoped for. Then his kids, this side of eternity, would have come back to life. They didn't. Job's version of hope only makes sense from an eternal perspective. We don't want that kind of hope. We want hope, like Solomon talks about, life under the sun, here and now. God, fix all of my challenges and problems here and now. That's not the reality of the human experience. So hope needs to be stretched in our timeline to not just include here and now, which according to Jesus will include troubles and calamities. It will include that. We need to stretch it to see life through an eternal perspective. That's the only way life can make sense for a parent that's lost a child or somebody that's been through true devastation. There is no feel-good quote that you can give somebody. They need the hope that comes in Jesus, and that is the only hope that can make a difference.
I'm thinking about what Paul said. If we are to be, if our hope is in this life alone, we are of all men to be despised, right?
Because
this side of heaven, there's much pain to be borne.
And that's a great point. We need the teachings of Jesus, and we need the teachings of Paul. And the Apostle Paul's writings make up the fabric of the New Testament for a reason. One of the things that Paul was very skilled at doing from both a literary point of view, but also a philosophical point of view, was how in the same sentence he could talk about immense suffering and also have a burning, bright hope in eternal life and the future. So I think Paul has a lot to offer us in a modern, complex world.
Love it. So good. Cody, do you have any follow-up questions? We always love to pass the mic.
So I guess even to just talk about, you said deep suffering and then immense hope. my brain goes to the verse in Galatians 6:2 where it says, keep pressing on for the good work. Like, do not give up on the good work. And my brain instantly goes to almost like just keep grinding, keep pushing forward for the name of Jesus. And would you say like those deep suffering and almost like deep work for hope should coexist in the same place?
I think that depends somewhat on how we approach the imperfections of life.
Okay.
So the same fire that destroys can also be the same fire that releases new life. So my land in Australia had we would call a bushfire, a forest fire.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of eucalyptus trees.
Okay.
I came back a few months later, charred ground, smell of smoke still thick in the air, hundreds of bright green little eucalyptus tree shoots. I'm like, how in the world are these things growing so quickly? Turns out that the eucalyptus tree is remarkable as a species because it thrives in fires that destroy everything else. One of the ways the eucalyptus tree does that is the heat of the fire. It's not that the seed germinates and is protected from the heat and therefore survives it. It's that the heat is required to burn away the outer coating so that the eucalyptus seed can germinate. I think that drama I'm drawn to, this idea that it's not just that we need to survive fires, grind through, push through, right? Work harder, ignore our pain. I'm not sure that's healthy. But when we start to see maybe somehow in the overall life trajectory I go on, Romans 8:28 will come to fruition. God will pick up every broken piece and every element of pain, and in his own way, not in a way I'll ever understand, and I won't understand it in the moment, but maybe in 10 years or in 20 years I will, that he had a way of working that towards his good.
Yeah.
And hope, therefore, takes the pressure off me, trying to figure out, well, God, you need to do this, and I want this outcome. It's like, okay, God, my hope means you're going to have a way of piecing this all together, and I may not like it or want it, but I know it will be for your good and for my growth.
That's so good.
Wow. Yeah. I did have another question.
Yeah.
And this more comes in the direction of, I grew up in a youth ministry, was saved when I was very young, but I had a youth pastor who told me about 70% of my generation is just walking away from their faith as soon as they graduate. Is there something, if it's one thing, a couple things that the church or Christians can do to get those people who have walked away or graduated from their faith back into the faith?
I mean, people that have already walked away from their faith, so to speak, the framing of that question for us, I think we have less control over people than what we would like to acknowledge. That people go on their own journeys and their own story. To me, I want to look upstream, right, as a church leader, as a pastor, and ask, what are we doing upstream that leads to the 70% walking away? And what can we fix before that happens? And to me, that's a part of the reason why I put pen to paper in this book, is to say, well, one of the things we need to fix is how we approach imperfections and challenges in life. And if we can teach younger generations that life is complex, and even if you walk forward in a church service and kneel at an altar and give your heart to Jesus, that doesn't remove the challenges you're going to have. In fact, you can make a pretty good case in the New Testament, things will get harder and more difficult. So that countercultural kind of salvation is not a removal of your problems here. Hope can breed a spiritual resilience, not just optimism. It's not something Pilates can give you. It's not something that cardio can give you. It's not something removing carbs from your diet can give you. A spiritual hope is something that can change the entire way you approach your life. And I think that's a piece of a complex equation that's very much needed.
I think that's remarkably helpful because while Gen Z is leaving the church,
Yeah.
you know, or they're being raised by people who've already left the church, you know, which chicken or the egg. I think many of them, they're grappling with the reality of the world in ways that I think previous generations maybe just tried to entertain themselves out of. And so Gen Z, though, finding high levels of depression, high levels of anxiety, their friends texting them in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about committing suicide, just the daily pressure of what the brokenness of the world actually is, it's leading them to ask really great questions about what hope there is right now.
That's right.
And so, just like you're saying, if we as the church, if we answer those upstream questions of how can we prepare people with a theology that is deep enough to grapple with the reality that they're experiencing on a day-to-day, I think you're so right that is not something that Gen Z is going to find themselves moving away from.
Right.
Something that this generation is going to say, I need that. I desperately need that. I need to give that to my friends. I need to give that to my family whose marriage is failing. And I think there is such a hunger and a heart for what this, honestly, this book is saying that there is good that can come out of the worst.
There is good.
Out of the catastrophes of life.
And you know what? Our storyline with God always curves towards a redemptive purpose. And so when we can start to approach life that way, and then if you're a pastor, if you're a leader, if you're serving young people in any way, we have a role to play right now, and it's crucial to be hope ambassadors. And if all you feel like you do is bring some light, well, with the dark clouds that are sitting on our culture right now, to be someone that brings light and brings hope, I think it's one of the most important things we can do for younger generations.
Amen.
Yeah, we need to let the light in. Yeah.
We have one final question.
Yes, okay.
So we always
Is it about breakfast? Is it about a
That's
dinner?
what we're gonna have for dinner.
Yeah.
Favorite snack. I do care a lot about food, and I am quite hungry.
It's
So
true.
as
Yeah.
tempted as I am
Yeah, it's
towards
true.
that question, the question that we always love to end the podcast on is, what is the one thing you would say to a young Christian leader?
Well, that's a great question. A young Christian leader.
Someone who sees the darkness of the world, sees the problems, and says, I want to do something about it. That's all our definition of leader
I think
is.
the people, if you're a young leader, I'll answer it this way. The things that made the biggest difference in my life, you know, say in like my early 20s, were the people that I served under. And I think finding the right people to apprentice yourself under and be shaped by, and not being afraid of that relationship. Give yourself to that relationship. Don't keep everybody at an arm's length. That person could hurt me. That person could, you know, their leadership could be too harsh. All of those kinds of things. A little bit of thicker skin can be good when you're in your early 20s. Sometimes there are some hard truths that you need to hear. Not everything may come in the form of an encouraging word or a pat in the back. When I think of my journey, I'm like, God used all of that to find the right people. I'm not saying you should intentionally find somebody that's harsh. I'm just saying that there's also a reality sometimes to being an apprentice, a protege of somebody that you really aspire to learn from. Surround yourself by leaders that you would love to emulate, but don't just look at their ministry. Look at their marriage, look at their family, look at their mental health, like look at their life and go, is that where I want to be? Find those people and open your heart to be mentored by them.
That is rich. That is so good. I think about all the people who are making college decisions about what dorms they want to go to and what, you know, if there's the degree path, but what about that question, who do I want to apprentice myself under in this incredibly influential season of life? That is good. So that's a charge to us. Ask that question. 2 questions. 1, what is the good that God is doing in the midst of this catastrophe? And 2, who do I want to apprentice myself to in this life season? So good. Thank you so much.
Oh,
for being
thank
here.
you guys. A real joy to spend time with you and talk with you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Thrive College Podcast. We hope that today's episode has empowered you to navigate the challenges and the opportunities of your future in your faith. If you really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciated what we had to offer, we would love for you to write a 5-star written review and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.